Stivers.
Here.
Saylor.
Present.
Glasgow.
Present.
Jackson. Here. Murphy.
Present.
Cheryl Steen.
Here.
And myself.
Item 3, adoption of minutes. You have minutes for the regular meeting Monday, February 9th, 2026, and the special meeting Wednesday, March 4th, 2026 in your packet. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes for Monday, February 9th, 2026, and Wednesday, March 4th, 2026?
I so move.
Motion by Mary Beth Stivers, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Janice Murphy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. All those who abstain, those will be filed. Item 4, police report.
He was off, today and he wasn't in. We were hoping that Zach Ward would be able to fill in for him, but he's next door tied up. He was gonna go through a new program out there, that's, basically an app that the county is using now, but it doesn't appear that he'll make it over here, so.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
No. Item 5, public works report. Jack?
Everything's been going okay. Just making a transition for moving into summer weather. That's about it right now. Other than, tomorrow I'll be busting the sidewalk out over there by Bohica's to put a new curb stop in. If you're wondering what's going on tomorrow morning.
We're in front of Bohica.
Just to the right of the Bohica's, there's a curb stop in the sidewalk that's not functioning properly. Can't turn the water off.
That's not good. Okay, are there any questions for Jack for the public works? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Um,
Item 6, library report.
Couple things she wanted to bring out here, the summary of last year, they had 15,730 items circulated in 2025, and 4,320 electronic circulations through Libby, an app they've got. 11,540 Wi-Fi sessions on personal devices, and 1,074 sessions on public computers for a total of 74,725 minutes. The numbers above were made possible by 2 staff of our team of 10 kind-hearted volunteers that put it together. Community outreach events coming up. Knit 1, Read 2 will meet on Tuesday from 1 to 3. Adult Book Club meets every Thursday of the month at 3.
Every third Monday.
Or third Monday, I'm sorry. Seam Rippers will meet the 4th Thursday at 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Spring break movies, March 16th at 1 p.m. for the children, March 18th at noon for adults. And movies for titles, please call the library during open hours, so she'll be able to tell you what's playing. That's all.
And the Friends of the Library had a very successful chili luncheon, and they are preparing for their book sale in June, and that will be the 3rd weekend in June.
Same time as the citywide garage
Yeah.
sales.
Yep.
That's what we do.
So you can put that on your calendars. Okay, anything else?
Book sales have been going really good, I've noticed up there, just the pop-up that we've had.
Yep.
Just Saturday, yeah.
Okay, nothing for item 7, police business, or president's business. Item 8, any committee reports?
We need to schedule a park committee after tonight if I can get with the park committee members, and then public works would be, I need to pull together at some time too.
You said park and public works.
Yep.
Item 9, treasurer's report. You have treasurer's report in your packet. Are there any questions for Cheryl or Roger? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the treasurer's report for February 2026?
I'll make a motion to approve the treasury report for February 2026.
Motion by Chris Saylor, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Don Jackson. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report for February 2026. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All those who abstain? Thank you. Item 10, approval of vouchers. You have the vouchers for February 2026 in your packet. Are there any questions for Roger or for Cheryl?
Any surprises with the pump install that we're getting?
Nothing yet, still waiting for the unit to come in. There's gonna be a cost. Basically, it's a protection device that they put on around, that's gonna be an additional cost on it, but it'll protect the pumps. Otherwise, the warranty's not valid with the pumps if you don't have the over current, sort of like a surge protector, but it's also wired into the system of the SCADA. The other thing, that, it would prevent is if we have a lightning hit or something like that too besides, so. We haven't heard anything yet, have we? No. We haven't paid them yet either for that one, so, hasn't arrived.
Anything else? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the vouchers for February 2026?
I'll move that we
Motion by Don Jackson. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Chris Saylor. We have a motion and a second to approve the vouchers for February 2026. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. All those who abstain? Item number 11. Consider approval of resolution 2026-01, resolution declaring Necedah's intent to discontinue Lineman, is that the correct way to say it?
Yep.
Lyman Lane and part of Babcock Drive in Laura Lynn Estates. Roger?
This was discussed briefly at the last meeting. John Orton put together the resolution. There's a total, in that area, I just gave you guys a map that showed the majority of the area is owned by one party, and then there's 3 other affected parties that are down there, which we'll have to notify. This resolution just says we're gonna go through the process of, vacating those sections of street. And once this preliminary one's done, I forward it to the attorney, and then there's some notifications we do. The planning commission's gonna have to meet also, and it comes back to the board, so it's a process that takes about, 3 months from start to finish. You know, it'll be this month, then, April, and then May will be a probably final action. So what we need to do is approve this for the first step.
Have you had any feedback going into it?
No,
Anybody else in the area?
I know that there was one individual that had some questions that I called and talked to, that had been made contact by the realtor. And then there was another individual that was reached out to by the attorney, and there's some discussion there. As far as, there's no negativeness on this at all that I'm aware of.
Are there any questions for Roger on this? Any questions that he needs to forward to, our attorney about this? Okay, this will be a roll call.
You'll be able to call you.
Okay. Do we have a motion to consider the approval, excuse me, of resolution 2026-01, resolution declaring Necedah's intent to discontinue Lyman Lane and part of Babcock Drive in Laura Lynn Estates. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Chris Saylor. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Seconded by Mary Beth Stivers. This will be a roll call vote.
Stivers,
Yes.
Saylor,
Yes.
Glasswell,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Okay. So then you'll just keep us up to date on the progress?
Yep, I will.
Excuse me. Since Tanya isn't here, is it all right with the rest of the board if we proceed on, and then when she comes in, let her speak?
Yes.
Okay. So we will go to item 13. Discuss the update of the Juneau County Outdoor Recreation Plan for 2027 through 2031.
Right now, the county, periodically does this, and we do put our projects in there that gives us the ability to apply for grants because of that, funding. We used this in the past for Old Mill Park when we built that, now with Veterans Park's expansion. So, it's a longer list of different things that we would like to see at different areas in the village. The park committee will meet on this, and then if anybody else has any input, we could add to it at the board meeting, but I have to get this back to them by June. And then, what ends up happening is they compile all the communities around with the outdoor rec plan, and they each have a section in that document. I think the only one that does their own is the city of Boston. I provided, some of the information in here that they gave us for updates. So far, I think a lot of the stuff, we've been checking things off as we go along, so I mean, things usually drop off as we get them done. So if anybody has any questions, I can try and answer them. If not, that's one reason why I was talking about getting a park committee meeting going together.
So it would be good if the park committee could meet and bring their recommendations to the April meeting. And if the public has any ideas or requests, please make sure you let Roger know.
The other thing is they do still have that survey that they were collecting data.
Yeah.
So we were having a low attendance up in Juneau County, and then the park, so that survey.
That was an online survey. wasn't it?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Okay, so Parks Committee, we'll look forward to hearing from you. Excuse me. Item 14. Consider approval of the planned equipment maintenance proposal, Cummins Sales and Service.
We were with them for many years, and then we switched to another company for a period of time, and one thing we discovered was, that Cummins has, certain software that they only have access to themselves, so what ended up happening is this last year, at least on 3 different occasions, we had to actually have one company come and do some work, and then found out it was something they couldn't troubleshoot, and then bring in the people that could troubleshoot, so then we got hit with 2 different bills. As these equipment gets older, especially the wastewater treatment plant down there, that's the oldest generator, we need to make sure that that's up and running when it, and it's getting a little bit more costly too. So I guess right now, I think that we should look at switching back to Cummins, and they do a planned service. And the one thing that I point out too is, they actually have on one of the pages that if we get to the point where we don't want them anymore, number 7, it says, on the second to last page, it says customer can cancel agreement at any time at 0 cost. So we can get out of the agreement, so they laid out 5 years because I'd asked them to have a plan in place to present to us. And right now, I think we had troubles at every generator that we had last year. With the public safety building, had a little hiccup, the water treatment facility up there, and then we also ended up having the wastewater treatment plant. It's great when you can pump water, but if you can't treat it on the other end, that creates a problem. So, I don't know, Jack, I gave you a copy of this proposal. Did you have any questions or anything that you want to bring up, or any issues that you?
No, I'm all for these guys versus who we got.
Yeah, so I guess you can look at it, it's not cheap to do, but the other thing is we don't get priority if we don't have them under contract either. So we call, and sometimes we waited a week.
Yes.
And when you end up not having backup power during a serious time, it's, you know, storm season. So I think it's the best option for us.
How
Until,
does compare cost-wise to the other company?
about the same.
About the same?
The other one was initially a little bit cheaper, but now it's about the same when you look at it. And the thing is when we paid twice for them to come, then it was more expensive, you know, because we had to.
Then you pay premium to these guys because you're not under the contract.
Well, and one thing Total Energies did do for us is they did waive one of the bills that they couldn't fix, something because they didn't have it, but we still had other costs that we had to incur, and they were decent about it, but,
Does this include preventative maintenance that they
Yep.
do?
they do,
They
yep.
do yearly preventative stuff?
Yep, and examples are, they package it, the very last sheet of the document, if you look on it, on the very back, shows some of the inspections that they do in the maintenance. The full service on the bottom, they're doing the basic changing of oils and filters and lube, but they also inspect the cooling fan, correct, you know, excessive wear, pulleys, tension, belt tensioners, slack adjusters, all the stuff that could go wrong. Some of the things that, you know, we run into, some things we can do ourselves, but the other thing is they've got the ability to even test the stuff under load, which we don't, without turning and shut something down, so they, like to do what they call bank testing periodically, but,
It's like this is for the emergency backup.
Yep.
Yeah.
when things, the only generator that we don't do through them is we do the one out here through Grace Electric, cause that was where we bought the Generac one, and that's shared with the town. Otherwise, the other three, we've been with the same company. But it's our recommendation that we think this would be the best way to do it, is to go with Cummins.
Sounds like a better service and more cost-effective, hard to argue.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Jack or for Roger? Excuse me. No. Or should this be okay? We need a motion to, approve the planned equipment maintenance proposal from Cummins Sales and Service. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Don Jackson. Do we have a second?
Second motion.
Motion is seconded by Mary Beth Stivers, so we have a motion and a second to approve the planned equipment maintenance proposal from Cummins Sales and Service. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All those who abstain? Okay, thank you. Item 15. Excuse me. Consider approval of resolution 2026-02, public comment procedure. Roger has some information.
I sat and discussed it with the attorney, and he would prefer us doing it as an ordinance instead of a resolution to make it more permanent in the ordinances, so, which would amend our ordinance properly, we'd have to go through an ordinance amendment process. Some of the things that we discussed, today was, one is, item number 3. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 2 minutes to address the village board. Additional time may be granted by the majority of the village board. He recommends striking that and put, based on the number of people that sign up to speak, the chair will decide how much time will be allotted for each speaker. Once everyone has a chance to speak, the chair may grant additional time to other people to speak. So it takes the minimum or the maximum time out completely. The other one that he did was strike number 4, which was the maximum 20 minutes will be allowed for public speaking input per meeting. Additional time may be granted by consent of the majority of the village board. He said he'd recommend removing that. The next one he said is, on number 5, he wanted to add, in most cases, speakers will be taking the order of signatures on the sign-up sheet. However, the chairperson may group speakers based on the topic to be discussed. So if there's a group that wants to discuss parks, for example, or streets, he grouped those people together and go that way rather than by the sheet list. The next item was, he said that to strike number 6. Number 7, the threatening language will not be tolerated. And number 8 was changed to no action can be taken by the village board on items discussed during public comment input period on the agenda. The village board may only act on items that are on the agenda is what would be added. But that's what was recommended. If we're fine with this, we take it back and John Orton will draft the actual ordinance. So if there's something you'd like changed or modified, I can bring that back to him too if you ever would.
So,
I think this is more what we're looking for.
Would we need to meet that ad hoc committee with the ordinance group first, or would we just?
John would be drafting it, so it wouldn't be our normal code
Okay.
enforcement, code.
Or, yeah,
Yeah,
ordinance, yeah.
yeah, so you draft it, bring it back,
Okay.
so if they're fine with these changes.
any other questions? Okay, then we'll forward this to our attorney to have an ordinance drafted.
So we need the motion for that.
I think it'll be just bringing it, and then he'll bring it back and we'll act on the ordinance, and he may tweak the language slightly a little bit based on what formats they do, but the concept, he said, is there, so.
Okay. And everybody's in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right, Tanya, we skipped over you, but we decided we would come back. So we'll skip back to number 12, presentation by Necedah Area School District, referendum information. This is by Tanya Kapowski.
I know I didn't have handouts, so I'm just gonna hand you one if you don't want it. I don't know how many are burning wood anymore, but you could probably fulfill that need. I also have Q&As if anybody wants one. I do have them. I'll just set them on the table up here. I'm Tanya Kitlowski. I am the superintendent for the Necedah Area School District. It is my 9th year in Necedah, 31 years in education, and I'm coming to you tonight to share a little bit of information on a few different angles of what it is that we're approaching here on April 7th. So we have had 2 operational referenda in our school district, 2 4-year. So every 4 year, we've renewed after the first 4 years, and we're at the place again of asking our local residents to consider another renewal. I have not done a good job of really helping people understand the why we're in this position. I've described what it is and how we determine what the funding is that we need. But I don't think I've done a good job really understanding the systemic statewide issue of why we're in this position. And I think part of it is too because our whole state, it has become so abundantly clear why we're in this position. And so it's not just a few districts in this position. After the April 7th election, it'll be over 75% of school districts in the state will have been to an operational referendum out of 421 school districts. So it definitely it says to me there's an issue. So here's the issue. If you look at the bottom here, there's a couple different charts. There are really 3 key things that I want to share with you around the why that I would even be standing in front of you, and what ifs, and I wouldn't be standing in front of you. So per pupil revenue, there is a need in our state, and I talked about this in the very first sentence of this document. There is a need for our state to revisit the state's responsibility and how they fund schools. Because the Constitution asks there to be a uniform approach and that the funding is adequate to meet the operational needs of our students and our schools. And so when in 1700s, that Constitution was written for public schools, the idea was we need local people, taxpayers, to contribute to their local schools, but it's going to be a small amount. I mean, the idea is the state's gonna cover 2/3, local taxpayers are gonna cover the other 1/3. And they wanted that because they wanted their communities to take ownership of their public schools. That's where a majority of their kids were going to go, and they really wanted that ownership, and taxpayer contribution was a part of building that ownership. And so that's where the Constitution kind of helps us understand some things that need to be considered when it comes to changes at the state level. So when you consider funding gaps, there are 3 areas. One, I'm going to skip down one. I want to talk about special education funding gap first. So in Necedah, we have about 21% of our student population. We have 650 kids. About 21% of that population are students identified with special needs. They have a disability. And so we do not take open enrollment for special education students. We haven't since I've been here, and probably prior to that, because it's too costly. The cost of providing those services is very expensive. And so these are our own residents, our own children of our community that we're serving, and it's 21%. The state average is around 14%. So our needs of our community is far more than the state average, and that comes into play here in a second. So last year, we used out of our general operational budget, remember we're talking about an operational referendum, we used $1.4 million of general operational budget to cover unfunded state reimbursements for special education services for our students. $1.4 million, just last year. If you look at the graph on the bottom right, over the last 10 years only, we were underfunded by the state by over $13 million. So when you consider we're having to use our general operational budget to fund unaided, unsupported, or reimbursed special education costs from the state, that is a huge burden to our operational budget, okay? The third thing on there is inflationary funding gap. So in 2009, the state was going through a pretty significant recession, okay? The recession was big, and the state was having to decide how we're going to stop the bleed, because we were going through a lot of things that were causing a lot of hardships in our state, including our state budget. And so what they did, they took a certain amount per pupil less away from schools. It was $500 and something per pupil. They decreased the amount of funding per pupil with the idea that you're going to make up that difference by getting some flexibility around healthcare costs and other things that were typically a negotiated thing with districts and staff. And so that was the idea. That was in 2009. We are still operating as in we're in a deep recession that we were in 2009. Because since 2009, we have had 0 years of inflationary increase in revenue. 0. So when people say to me, you just gotta balance your budget. Well, we've had no choice than to balance. You know what inflation has done. I mean, there was a year in, I think it was 22, 23, don't quote me, but it was right there somewhere, 22, 23, or 23, 24. Inflation was 32% that year. 32%, and we had 17% increase of revenue. And that included the $950,000 referendum. Had we not had the referendum, our increase would have been just over 4%. And a 32% inflationary increase. So we've had no choice than to try to figure out how to manage the revenue that we're getting with the inflationary increases. So that's another piece. Had we had those annual incremental inflationary increases between 1.5%, 3% typically is what you're looking at in a typical year, we would have had $2.3 million more in our budget today, and I wouldn't be standing in front of you. And I would wager every school district out of that 75% that is facing an operational referendum, had they had the annual inflationary increases, they would not be asking it either. So when you think about the Constitution and you think about adequate, is the state providing adequate funding for public schools, and you look at these gaps, I would say absolutely not. They're not even close. So when you think about the Constitution, you think about fair, if you look at the first one, if there are students in our state being funded at $26,000 plus per student, and Necedah is considered a low revenue district, we are the lowest in the state, along with a bunch of other schools, it's not just us. We are at $11,378. Hello, if I had $26,000 per student, I wouldn't be standing here again. So the inequity and the uniformity is not there. I mean, it's inequitable and it's certainly not uniform. So again, are we really following the Constitution when you see that significant difference? In special education, when you consider private schools are reimbursed at 90%, public schools are reimbursed at, right now, we're looking at 35 to 38. That's not uniform. How is that uniform? And it's certainly not adequate when we have had a $13 million deficit the last 10 years. So when you go to the backside, this stemmed us thinking hard at the board level of what it is we need to do. And so the shared revenue in our district is the revenue limit. So each year, or each biennium budget, the state says, this is law, this is how much schools are going to get. And part of that revenue limit cap, it's capped, you cannot go above it. Part of that revenue cap has local taxpayer levy, right? The local taxpayers are picking up a portion, and the state is picking up a portion. The cap is what it is. What shifts is who's taking responsibility. When the Constitution was written, the state says, we're gonna pick up 2/3. In Necedah is picking up 80%. Not 2/3, 80% of the revenue limit cap. So 80% of that cap has been shifted to local taxpayers, and 20% is being picked up by the state. That would have been totally inverted with the intent of what was kind of laid out in the Constitution. So when you think about, again, adequate or uniform, there are school districts in our state that are, there's one, 100% state aided, 100%. There are school districts in our state that are 100% is by their levy, they get 0 state aid. Ours is exceptionally high, let me just tell you that. So I'm talking about the two ends of the spectrum, and I mean, I share that because there's everything in between. We are exceptionally high with 80%. And why this is an important point is because when they consider how much burden the taxpayers are gonna pick up out of that law they just passed, it's all based on property wealth. Okay, any school district that has lakefront property like we have has high property wealth, right? You know what all of the newly developed projects have given us. I mean, there's a lot of high property around lakefront, waterfront in our school community. The higher your property value, the higher portion of that revenue limit cap taxpayers are going to have on their tax bill. So when people say, Tanya, my taxes went up, why did my tax go up? What is the school doing with that money? The school is capped, okay? We're capped. Just because your tax bill went up doesn't mean we got extra money. It just means that the burden of that revenue cap shifted to a higher amount on local taxpayers. So our levies going up, the taxpayer burden, the state aid is going down. And so it's really, really important to think about the inadequacy of that kind of policy when your community is made up of, your majority of your taxpayers are made up of fixed and low income citizens. And I have shared this at the state level for years, saying this isn't how this formula should work. There has to be some kind of threshold that's considered when it's determined what percentage of that revenue limit is picked up by local taxpayers. There has to be something. I don't care if it's medium income, I don't care if it's census data with 65 and older residents. There has to be something there that is considered, not just straight property wealth. So that is a piece that is certainly pushing some of the reasons we're doing some of the things that we're doing in the proposal that you'll see on April 7th. The last thing I'm going to mention before the logistics of the operational referendum is, in my 31 years, I have constantly felt like there is this tension and this conflict between the priorities of taxpayer advocacy and championing for children. And it's because in the state of Wisconsin, how we fund our public schools is by property taxes. So every time taxpayers are trying to advocate for their taxes to go down, public schools are going to reap the results of that impact. What I'm suggesting today is we're thinking about that wrong. We have a school community. We don't have children and taxpayers. We have a school community, and we have to begin thinking about how those two things unite to do a better job with fiscal policy in the state of Wisconsin for public schools. Our taxpayers and our children aren't separate. It's together. And so what does that look like when we're advocating for both? And I want to share with you a strategy that we're using for that. So uniform and adequate, I would argue, are both compromised right now with current state funding policy. I don't think they're doing a good job with either one. And why, you'll have heard in the news, or maybe haven't heard yet, why Necedah School District is a plaintiff in the lawsuit that we have filed in Eau Claire County to argue that state legislature is not upholding its responsibility to adequately and uniformly fund public schools. They're not upholding their responsibility. They have shifted that responsibility onto local taxpayers through what you will see across the state as operating referenda. And that's wrong. What you'll read in the Constitution is it's a state responsibility to adequately fund schools. This, to me, does not look like a state responsibility. This is a local taxpayer responsibility. This is not state. And so what our school board talked about, and time again, is how do we advocate? And lo and behold, we are one of 5 school districts, and it's kind of a long story how we got there, but we got there, and we are one of 5 school districts saying we can do better. Now, how to make that shift happen is something else I'm going to talk about at the very end, but that is part of our push. Our taxpayers have said over the last 8 years, we're supporting the kids, and everybody, we sit back and we just hope for change. Right? We just are like, please let there be some change, and nothing happens. And we're not going to wait anymore. We have to do something and take action. We're just not going to sit back and hope and pray that something different. We're going to push it out there to try to make some change, and that's this work. Our operating referenda was a long discussion with our board, because what they considered is, how do we offset the ask, the amount of money we're asking for the next 4 years out of our local taxpayers? How do we offset that to ask as little as possible, but still keep a stable budget? Okay, so we ran scenarios saying this is how much you're gonna need, and every year, it's relatively speaking, about 200 to 300,000 is inflation for us a year. And so every year you'll see that this is going up by a couple $100,000 minus year 4, and you'll see in the blue why that's the case. So what the board said is, we have this fund balance, and kind of conceptually speaking, it's like a savings account. It's more than that, it's more complex than that, but it's like a savings account. Similar to, you have your savings account, if your car breaks down, you're like, thank goodness I had this little bit of savings because I need this part, I need new tires, I need a new vehicle. You know, you have the savings for the purpose of that. Schools are required to have the same. So we have a policy that requires us to have 11% in our fund balance, and 11% is 11% of the expenses for that year. So we'll have 11% in there of the expenses that we typically would have. So the board said, what would it look like if we started spending that fund balance so we didn't have to ask our taxpayers for as much? And I will argue it's not fiscally responsible to use fund balance, but our board said it's more important to us to make sure we're doing whatever we can for our taxpayers because they continue to support us, and we're gonna do whatever we can to help. And so you'll see in 2026-27, the amount of our fund balance is 20%. By 29-30, you'll see that we've dropped to 12%. 12.4. Okay? So every year, as you'll see, the amount gets bigger and bigger. So the ask doesn't have to be what would equate to inflationary increases. They're pulling that out of fund balance. Right? It's 200 to 300,000 a year increase for inflation. They're pulling that out of fund balance so we don't have to ask our taxpayers for that additional amount. Otherwise, these numbers, you might as well tack on that fund balance because that's what we really need to just sustain. Okay? The last thing I'm just gonna, so what that means for you is, if you look at this monthly tax impact, it's $1.42 a month for $100,000 assessed value in 2026-27. That's the impact, $1.42 a month. Then it jumps the next year to $1.59 a month, etc. At the very bottom, I just totaled it all together, and I said over 4 years, you'll have about a $7 a month increase in those 4 years. So that's the tax impact. And lastly, at the bottom, litigation in and of itself can be a mechanism of which to start to think and propel momentum to cause change. But that isn't the end of the road. It is all of us saying what I just described is not right. And if it's not us, who is it going to be? If it's not now, when is it going to be? Because we've been waiting and hoping, and we have communicated with legislators every year. I have spoken at joint finance committee meetings every single time we have a biennium budget. I have attended town hall meetings and spoke. I've met with legislators. I've sent resolutions from our board trying to get different funding policy. We've done all of these things and nothing has changed. So litigation is that opportunity, and our Necedah is one of 5 districts in the whole state of 421 districts that is saying, let's do this for us, but because it's the right thing to do. And if we can all unite on that and say, you know what, we need changes for this community, it's going to impact the whole state. So this taxpayer advocacy team on March 19th, we are meeting for the first informational meeting at Real Inn at 6 p.m. If you want to join us, we'll be in that back room, and I'll just be sharing information, and kind of you can consider or not if you want to make that kind of commitment. But the idea is, they haven't listened to me, I have no influence at all, but if taxpayers are united and saying, we need to change this, I think we have hope to make change at the state level. So, that's all I have.
Do you wish to entertain any questions from the people who are here while we're here?
If anybody has
If
questions.
any questions specifically for Tanya, she would be happy to answer.
So how is it decided that, which schools, like private schools, you were saying, get more of the pot?
It's in law. Yep. So private schools are funded at 90%, and by law, we were supposed to be funded at 42% this year and 45% the next year. But the way it's decided is by a pot of money, not by the needs of the school district submitting their request. It's by, here's the pot of money, and that's all we have to spend. And so based on the request, you may or may not get 42%. The last estimate that we just had is we're closer to 35%. So state law is saying 42, and we're saying we're getting 35. And
But
private's
the
getting 90.
private get more though.
Yes. Yes. So is that uniform? I would argue no, not close.
I have a question. can you let the people know like what would happen if this referendum is voted down? What's the outcome of that? Like, what's the effect of that?
Good question. So the operational referendum is to sustain operations. What I would really love is to not have to just sustain. You know, when we have a group of kids come into us in 4th or 5th grade, and they're 2 or 3 or more age levels below where developmentally appropriate aged kids would be, if we don't do anything different and they just continue to get a year of education and a year of growth, those kids never catch up, right? I mean, they're all of a sudden 8th graders still 2 and 3 and 4 years behind. So unless you do something different to intervene and personalize something for that child based on their needs, we're never going to accelerate the learning for that child. We don't have resources to do that the way our kids deserve. When you have 3 people servicing 250 kids, it's not, you can't, you're only addressing your most needy of the needy. So when people talk about where academically our kids are, you know, I'm feeling really good if we have the growth we do. But we can do better if we had resources to do that. So when I think about what's going to not exist, we don't have to provide interventions for kids. Those are luxuries, which I would argue we're very understaffed and under-resourced with those luxuries, but those are things that would go, because they're not mandated. So when people say, why do you need more funding? Your kids aren't performing well. Taking away funding isn't going to help our kids perform better. It's going to contribute to a lack of personalization and intervening when our kids need us the most, especially at that elementary 4K to 5-year, 5th grade age level. And so all of the services we offer that are not mandated are all at risk. So any of our support staff that are, you know, helping with intervention, are helping with, you know, other supervisions and things with kids that need extra help, whether it's behavioral, you know, that is part of our world now. Whether it's, you know, reducing bus routes, you know, making bus routes longer, making class sizes bigger, all of those things play a part, and it does not improve the quality of education. It would actually minimize the quality of education for our kids. And folks, it's sometimes, I think we forget, I do, I remind myself of it when I'm walking down the halls. The kids in our school right now are gonna be taking care of us. I mean, that's fact. There are home health care workers, there are emergency workers, they're in our hospitals, our assisted living centers, I mean, you name it. Our kids right now are going to be taking care of us. They're gonna be the ones deciding health insurance rates, they're gonna be deciding insurance rates, they're sitting in our seats right now. And I would say that one of our greatest investments in the planet is to invest in the kids that are going to be creating the future, not just for us, but for generations.
So this has actually been going on for years.
Oh, yes.
So,
Oh, yes.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it did go, this has been like this for years.
We're at a breaking point. We're at a breaking point right now, because when all of a sudden all these districts are having to go to an operational referendum, whoa! Because little Necedah, you know, the little P in the middle of the state there, may not have the biggest voice, but all of a sudden you get big school districts saying, listen, we can't make this work either. And they're consolidating schools and doing all sorts of stuff to try to save money. We can't do any of that. We're as lean as we can be. And so all of a sudden people start paying attention in a different way. And that's why I think litigation is so important right now. I think we have a chance to try to influence change that we really have needed for a long time. Since 2009, for sure.
So if I were to become active and to develop, I have relationships, who would you suggest I call into my legislative team?
If you can get a response, I would encourage you to call our legislators who are our elected officials, which would be Scott Krug and Patrick Teston. I mean, Senator Teston and Representative Krug represent our school district. So I would encourage you to contact them. But part of our taxpayer advocacy team is to do just that. So we have an information session, first session. The second session is to understand the litigation, what all it's all entailed, and really people understanding what we're doing and why. And the attorneys in the law firm will be here for that. The third session is to really try to figure out how we communicate more locally. And I'm talking Juneau County-wise, because every district in Juneau County is experiencing the same thing. We're not special. I mean, we are special, but not special like that. And then the last one, I've started creating a communication toolkit for people as we develop our strategy for how we're going to influence change at the state capitol. What that looks like. Timelines, who, where, what, messages, all of that stuff. So it's all in the works, and if you're wanting to be a part of that momentous occasion, I would love to have all of you. I will just mention as well, because I know it was asked, our litigation is pro bono. Our law firm is doing this pro bono, and partially because they have seen in the nation how Wisconsin has significantly dropped in per pupil spending compared to the nation. And we once were way up here, and now we're right at the bottom. So I think it has a lot of attention drawn nationally to us right now. And there are other lawsuits going around in the nation right now. Kentucky has one. There's another state as well that just had one out. I'm not gonna say, I think it's Indiana, but I'm not positive. But there's 2 other states right now that are also litigating similar complaints. So it's time for us to start investing in kids in the right way as a state, not just local taxpayers, which I would argue should not be funding a majority of the burden.
Are you trying to get other school districts to join into the group of 5?
No. The complaint is about 100 pages right now, and it has taken everything to try to get everything coalesced into the arguments and the complaint. And so it was a lot. We were the last school district to join, which is a short story in and of itself, but we were the last district to join. We do have a parent. Every school district, all the 5 districts have parents, students, and teachers unions. And so all of them have invested interest with the quality of education, for the kids. So Julie Stritty is our parent, who is a resident parent in our community. She is a plaintiff in the lawsuit separately than the school district. And every district has that. Our Necedah Education Association, our teachers union, is a plaintiff separate than school district. So every school district has a similar format. And there are some additional associations who are plaintiffs, but they are not taking, the complaint's been delivered, it's out there. I think what is most important at this point, and I've had districts call and say, what can we do, how can we get on? And I say, listen, as we develop this advocacy work, not by Tanya, because if I could advocate and I had influence, we would have already had changes. Because I can talk to one blue in the face. They don't care what a superintendent says, but by gosh, if all of the taxpayers in Juneau County are saying, come on, you can't keep continuing to ask us for an operational referendum. That's not our responsibility, it's yours. If we can develop that coalition, I think people listen. So I truly believe that. It's the voting citizens that make a difference when it comes to change at the state level. Not position, votes. Because that's what makes a difference at that level.
I guess to kind of clarify my previous question, like if it's voted down, the referendum, like are they going to have to take away from like sports groups? Like would that cause, programs like band, football,
Anything.
extracurricular clubs?
Anything can be impacted, anything that's not mandated. What you just described are peanuts, are such peanuts of a big budget, that for me, under my watch anyway, those are not opportunities I would take from kids. I mean, if they're gonna have big class sizes and school's gonna become much more difficult for them, the last thing I wanna do is take away things that they really enjoy and that help them grow. And so, you know, the budget is dependent upon, almost 80% of our budget, about 75 to 78% is staffing. I mean, that's what schools are. We're people. We're a people-oriented business. And so it's going to be people that we have less of. And when I was just arguing a bit ago that if we had more people and more resources, we could do a better job helping with our kids that are coming to us so deficient. But we can't. We just don't have enough people. So this is helping to sustain, not give us any extras.
Are there any other questions for Tanya?
Thank you all.
They can contact you at
You betcha.
at school or
Anytime.
at your
Yep.
meetings?
Anytime. If you go to our website, it's the best place for information. Just go to our website, there's a little referendum icon at the top, click that, and it'll give you all sorts of information. This is a Q&A, it's all on the website, but some people just like to have the hard copy. Like, want a little reading here and there throughout your home. Not suggesting where you might read that at, but you could, read it anywhere. That's there, it's all on the website, it's the same information.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Tanya, for making the presentation today. Item 16, correct, we're on 16? Administrator's report.
The first one was the settlement between Huckleberry Allright, Roger Gary and the village. The agreement was assigned by all parties. A payment was made by the insurance company, not the village and Necedah. And there was no admission. This agreement is entered into a settlement dispute claims and no party admits fault or liability by entering into this agreement. So that was something that I wanted to make clear to everybody. There's been some questions raised about that. The next thing is our village newsletter was completed and is going out. And that should be in the mail by the end of the month, and it'll include the election information. And then spring cleanup is scheduled for May 11th, 2026. An ad went in the news letter on that, and it's pretty similar to what we've done in the past. The only thing that's changed a little bit is the maximum size of a pile is 10 feet by 10 feet. That was never really put in there, but everything else would be consistent on that. And then as far as the audit, we've been going through on that. And as far as everything went really smooth this year. And we had no real questions that we couldn't answer. I think that they'll be here in April meeting to do a presentation. And we'll have some documents for you. It could possibly slide back to May, but they were shooting for April. Some of the things that they asked that we had to provide that was some of the stuff regarding the utility, water utilities, sewer utilities. There's a replacement cost that they figure in, and then it's the operating cost. They want you to set aside so much money each year into an account for replacement, and that's something that they're gonna address at that meeting. Because I think right now they're gonna come forward and ask us to have rates raised in the sewer utility in order to have enough replacement. They go based on your assets, which, when I mean assets, like the wastewater treatment plant, the lift stations, they figure how much that costs and they come up with a percentage of what we should be setting aside. We just got done with a project, so our asset is a little bit higher than what it was before we rehabbed it, so that number changes, so that's one thing. And the water utility works is similar in that same way. The only thing is the water utility right now has been pretty stable, but he'll address that and he'll be able to answer some questions, but I think that's the one thing that I would say that you guys should plan on, and I'll try to get more information.
I think that's good to plan ahead and have some money to repair. Are we talking potential big jump in rates?
Uh,
Or is that something we can stage out over
You
a
could
period of
probably
time?
stage out, and a lot of times, like for our project, our wastewater treatment plant project, we applied for what they call principal forgiveness. So our clean water fund loan that we got, they forgave half of that loan. So we did a couple $1 million project. If you keep in mind, our plant cost $2.9 million to build, and our upgrade was like $2.1 million. And then they forgave half of it, so, and our plant was built in 2000, so you look at a plant like ours is probably a $10 million plant now. And right now, we're sitting in pretty good shape. The only thing I would say down the road is, we talked about generators, that generator was put in 2000, and right now it's at 25, 26 years old, so at some point, that's one of the things that probably would be in that replacement cycle. So, but it's just part of doing business. We're sitting, I think both our utilities are sitting really well as far as what we have for equipment, you know, and as far as the wells, I don't think there's, you know, anything, we'd love to have another well, but, that's something that is needed, but overall, we've done all the things, I think, to put ourselves in a good position with the
So
utilities.
being that we just put all this money into it, I'm sure, I mean, depreciation or, I mean, it has to be pretty low, because we just got, put some money into it, but I'm sure, you know, 15, 20 years, but.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the things in the future that we'll probably be looking at is lift station work. We're doing a couple lift stations now with pumps, but that's something that we're gonna probably do in the future. And one thing that would be probably something that is not necessarily a replacement, but if we did an upgrade of some sort, would be having it tied into our SCADA system, so they could read the information right at the plant, just like they do the wells and the wastewater plant, they can sit at a computer screen. Some of the neighboring communities have the ability to sit there and look at how their lift station's performing, how much electricity it's using, how many amps it's drawing, so you know when you have to do some things. Right now, we have to physically go out and check on that stuff and try to troubleshoot where you could look at a computer screen and say, we've got a problem with pump 2 in this one, just by looking at it based on the amp draw. So, but the big thing is using someone else's funds, the state or the federal, to help us do things locally, because we couldn't do everything ourselves without that. And we've been very lucky with the principal forgiveness, the loan programs within community block grant. Clean water fund is more sewer, safe drinking water is the water end of it. Community block grants we used, so. But that's all under the audit end of it, they look at all that stuff, and some of the information in that audit is used when we do our applications, so. But that's really all I've got, unless somebody's got any questions on the audit.
Any questions for Roger? Okay, we need a motion to go into closed session.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Motion by Mary Beth Stivers, do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Seconded by Janice Murphy. We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call vote?
Stivers.
Yes?
Saylor.
Yes.
Lasswell.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.